Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode on the Nutmegs and Knee Slides podcast. FIFA have recently announced their plan to retreat from any proposals on planning to sell the World Cup rights for 2030 to a private investment fund. For those of you who don't know what that means, effectively, in this early stages especially, FIFA owns all the rights to the 2030 World Cup. Now, if FIFA eventually sold those rights to a private investment fund, most likely owned by someone with billions and billions in their bank, then that person who has bought the rights to the World Cup in 2030 will have all the say in shaping the World Cup, how it goes, and everything like that. This obviously got a number of football fans very angry because it is effectively more proof that FIFA, who are supposed to be a non-profit organization, are trying to sell our beautiful game to whoever can give them the most money. After a number of backlash, Gianni Infantino has announced that he will not be continuing through with this plan.
This is what the letter says. We acknowledge mistakes were made in the process of the proposed establishment of FIFA Forward Enterprise. It was certainly not the intention for the FIFA Council and FIFA member associations to feel excluded from the process, and it should have been handled differently.
Well, apparently, a simple sorry is not quite enough. Many nations have decided not to celebrate the fact that football is effectively saved and have decided instead to either criticize and condemn or stand by Gianni Infantino. His controversial decision was always going to bring up a bit of scrutiny, and already a number of great footballing powerhouses, especially in international football, have already voiced their frustration with the FIFA president. These football powerhouses include Germany, England, the Netherlands, Sweden, and many other great countries in international football have all voiced their disgust for what Gianni Infantino has done and have called for his resignation. Meanwhile, a number of other nations have voiced their full support for the FIFA president. Most of these nations are much smaller ones, such as Kuwait, Congo, but a few of them are quite noticeably big, but they all have a few things in common. Argentina has voiced their very much and very strong support for Gianni Infantino, despite being a nation who many football fans argue have been favoured by FIFA in the last few years. Morocco, Mexico, and Qatar also stand by the FIFA president and would like to see him continue. Those nations have all been gifted the chance to host a World Cup in the next few years or in the past few years by the FIFA president. So here's the question. A while ago, FIFA was actually voting on this proposed change to sign off the World Cup rights. They would not be able to do this as they are as they are quite mostly a non-profit organization, or that's what they claim to be. But due to this, they would not be able to do this without the country's approval. However, obviously, as FIFA and money and everything in football works, money is always going to be a factor. FIFA basically came out saying that countries that vote for this proposed selling of the World Cup rights would receive more money from FIFA, and those who do not vote for it would receive less. Sounds like corruption at its finest. And the big thing that seems to be focused on, or maybe should be focused on, is Argentina's support for FIFA. As I've said, many football fans seem to voice a sense of favoritism towards Argentina, as in the last few World Cups in particular, a few decisions have gone in favour of La Albiceleste. These can be given from things such as dodgy penalties in the 2022 World Cup to other dodgy decisions between referees and officials in the 2026 World Cup. Some may be arguing Brio Embolo's red card or a refereeing performance that left a lot of question marks in the last 16 between Argentina and Egypt in the last World Cup. We're now nearly a month away from this World Cup after Spain obviously beat Argentina in the final. And FIFA is still yet to give out any real disciplinary action against Argentina and their disgraceful behaviour from the final. Lino Scaloni crying in the press conference, absolutely normal, especially after losing a World Cup. He'll feel the emotion. What's not normal, though, is a country displaying a banner after beating England in the semi finals, describing the Falkland Islands belong to Argentina. What's also not normal is Leandro Paredes' decision to attack Eric Garcia and Gavi after the final whistle of the World Cup, where he obviously put his hands around the neck of the Spanish defender and threw the smaller 21-year-old Spanish midfielder to the ground. He was sent off. However, there is more conversations to be had. Petitions have been signed to have Leandro Paredes banned for life. It's unclear what was made, whether it is all football together, just FIFA events, or international football altogether, but it is fair to say that there's something maybe going on here. Argentina are voicing a very strong backing for FIFA and Gianni Infantino. And not only Argentina, because Argentina have seemingly been favoured by FIFA in the last World Cups, or is it down to purely good performances and world-class players such as Lionel Messi? We don't know. However, questions do need to be asked when there's a pattern emerging where Morocco and Qatar and Mexico, how they are all standing by FIFA. Now, they're the only big nations, Argentina, Morocco, and Mexico. My understanding is that they are the only teams in the top 15 of the current FIFA World Rankings to voice their backing for Gianni Infantino. The other 12 nations in that top 15 bracket have either not said anything on this situation or have voiced their disappointment and have called for Gianni Infantino to resign. Now, this is obviously going to cause some controversy, as many people will say that the World Cup has not been rigged the last few years, that it has been fairly won and competed and contested by Argentina. However, there is some sort of pattern. You need to try and look at if there's something going on here. Germany and England and the Netherlands haven't had any sort of real history with FIFA or any good links. England haven't been world champions since 1966. Germany not have gone 12 years without a major trophy now and are arguably slipping further and further away from it. And the Netherlands have had a very hard time never winning a major trophy since the days of Marco van Basten in the Euros, and on occasions not even qualifying for the World Cup. So is it out of bitterness or is it genuine disapproval for what Gianni Infantino is doing to this game? Here's where I stand with this. I don't think that there's much to say when it comes to favoritism. But I do think that when you look at who is voicing their approval and their disapproval for Gianni Infantino after what he's done is blatantly wrong and genuinely harmful for football, there needs to be some sort of analysis because any good nation that has, when I say good nation, I mean any successful or quality football nations. Many teams that have voiced their approval for FIFA, countries like the UAE, Congo, Kuwait, smaller countries who don't exactly have the footballing legacy that Argentina or Brazil or Italy or Germany have. The only countries currently that are in the high bracket that have voiced their support for Gianni Infantino are countries who have been chosen by Gianni Infantino to host World Cups in the next few or last few years, or countries who have potentially seemed to have benefited over Gianni Infantino's reign as FIFA president. And when there's been controversy, it's mainly favoured them. And Gianni Infantino has not really commented on anything like that. Gianni Infantino has never said that he's favoured Argentina. He's never really said anything. He's never come out and said that he's got a favourite nation, and rightly so, because he can't. He, as FIFA president, is meant to be a neutral figure. But some of football's biggest names are coming out and saying that what he's done is wrong. And I go back a bit to jog a few people's memories 5 years back when the European Super League happened. We're almost seeing the same thing where someone is trying to change the game, extort it, change tournaments, get rid of it, get rid of what the fans want to see, and doing it all so that they can fill up their own pocket. Now, when you look at what's happened, Florentino Perez and Joan Laporta, they stayed in their jobs as heads of Barcelona and Real Madrid, and they still are to this day. Now, whether or not Gianni Infantino stays in as FIFA president, I think it's fair to assume that he will probably stay. I don't think that Gianni Infantino will be resigning. I don't think that he will be voted to be kicked out of his job. That's not to say, though, that I don't think he should resign. Many, many countries do seem to back Gianni Infantino, and they will probably continue to back him until they find a candidate who is better than him to take over this job, because it's a big role being the head of FIFA. But I think that in the next few weeks, maybe, especially when Argentina is waiting after favourable things go their way in the World Cup, and after the absolute disgraceful behaviour that they've been and how they've been acting towards the end of that World Cup, the fact that FIFA has not postponed them, we not to say that we can't rule out anything going on between the two parties, but we have to look at it and say, is there some sort of mutual bond between the two? Is there something that is maybe, just maybe, persuading someone who is a footballing powerhouse in Argentinian football, like Argentina, one of the biggest nations in South American and world football? Is there something maybe that is prompting them to side with Infantino? Whether it be favourable decisions in terms of the matches or suspensions with Leandro Paredes and Enzo Fernandez and everything like that. Is there something that's convinced Qatar and Morocco and Mexico to side with Infantino, because it's almost an unspeakable crime that Infantino was committing against our game that we love. And to think that countries who have loved football for many, many years, and it's a rich part of their whole country's history, think they want to back that is, to me, surprising. And I stand with a lot of the nations who are saying that Gianni Infantino should leave his job. I agree that what he's done is objectively wrong, and I would not be surprised nor mad if he was to get the sack or resign. Think you're better than me at fantasy football? How about we find out? If you want, join the Nutmegs and Nearsides Fantasy Premier League team before the season starts, and we might just have to sell this in the game. Or the players will. Join code is LAKPH4 for anyone who's interested. So, see you there. Now back to the video. Well, now that we're done with all the ranting on about FIFA, I think it's time now to talk some more about some transfers. So, looking at some football transfer news, the bombshell from today was that Ronald Araujo has gone to Liverpool for, I believe it's a loan deal with an option to buy the player for, I think, about £50 million. And it's an interesting move. When you look at the two parties, Liverpool, who have just lost Canate, and when you take Van Dijk and Canate out of Liverpool's team last year, I mean, there will be struggles, there will be holes. You can't rely on Joe Gomez. Leone got injured. They have just signed Jaquette, which is okay. But yeah, I think it's good squad depth for Liverpool, and potentially they could have a new starter in their team. And when you look at Barcelona too, I mean, they this is going to be an interesting situation for Barcelona because Ronald Araujo has been in their team for 5 or 6 years now, and he's always been there. He's always been there for Barcelona. He's won trophies. He's won lots of stuff. He's done good performances. So you have to look at their squad depth in the centre back role. Jules Koundé, I believe, is a centre back, but he's played right back for them, and I feel like he wouldn't change. I feel like he would stay probably as a right back. But yeah, I mean, they've got Eric Garcia, they got Pau Kabasi, so they got decent options in the centre back. But yeah, Ronald Araujo will potentially be a big miss for Barcelona. I actually like the fact that he's gone away on a loan deal. Actually, kind of surprises me. I'm surprised that Barcelona let him go that easily. If there was a player like Ronald Araujo who's been such an important part of your team as a leader, he's won the captain's armband a fair few times. When he's that important to your team, unless something's gone on at the club between him, they've had disagreements, which I don't think they have, I wouldn't let him go that easily. £50 million, yeah, good money, but on a loan deal, there surely should be more in the deal for Barcelona. But yeah. Bruno Guimaraes has signed for Arsenal, and that is a good move for Arsenal. They are building a very good midfield. They really are. Like, Declan Rice, Martin Odegaard, Guimaraes now, Eze, Zubamendi, Mika Marino. From the end of the season, I know for the last couple years we've been talking about how good Vitinha, Jean Neves, and Fabian Ruiz have been, but come the end of the season, depending on what Arsenal win, if they get better, if they can go far in the Champions League again, we could be talking about them in that conversation for who's got the best midfield. I think Bruno Guimaraes is a good player, and I think again, it highlights the the food chain of the Premier League. Like when you think back to the last season, this is a bit on Newcastle. When you look at last summer and Manchester United and Newcastle were fighting for Benjamin Šeško. In the end, Newcastle were in a better position. They'd had they're much richer than Man United. They would had no problems whatsoever when it came to money. They were in the Champions League. They had a great manager. They were certain on what they wanted to do. Man United just finished 15th and no European football, no hope at all. And they still signed Benjamin Šeško. And it wasn't a fact that like Newcastle didn't bid or anything like that. I think Newcastle offered more money than Man United. It was because Benjamin Šeško wanted Manchester United, and he obviously wasn't the only player. That's like the big one for me that like proved the pull. But like you know the fact that they also lost out on Cunha and Burmo, Trafford, Pedro, um, Ekatike. They missed out on a fair few players, and then they lost Isaac. Then this summer they've lost Anthony Gordon. Now they've lost Bruno Guimaraes. They've lost Sandro Tonali. It highlights, I think, the the pyramid of who is the bigger club. Not necessarily the better club. You would say probably that Tottenham are bigger club than Newcastle, and that's a controversial statement. I personally don't view Tottenham as a big six club anymore, but I don't view Newcastle as one either. I think that Aston Villa took Tottenham's spot, but I think that you know, when you look at Newcastle, compare them to Tottenham, how not only are players choosing Tottenham over Newcastle after back-to-back 17th place finishes, not only are players choosing to go to Tottenham over going to Newcastle, but Newcastle players are saying we want to go to Tottenham. Like I think it shows a real strength in the pool that other Premier League clubs have, specifically that traditional Big Six. But for Newcastle, the thing is, at the end of the day, these players can go on strike like Alexander Isak did. They can refuse to train. They can refuse to do all that. They can push for a move, say that. At the end of the day, as long as that player's under contract, Newcastle have the final say, somewhat have the final say, like in that player going. Like if they don't want him to go, then they don't have to let him go. The player can stay and just sit on the bench and refuse to train and all that. And when they do that, it's probably better to just sell them and take the money than just have them there doing nothing. But, you know, I think this probably does highlight where Newcastle are because, I mean, look at them now. I think their star player is probably Harvey Barnes. You got Dan Burn, you got Nick Pope, I guess, you got Ramsdale, if he's still there. And then that's it. That is it. No more Trippier, no more Guimaraes, no more Tonali, no more Isak, no more Gordon. These last few years, what we've seen with Newcastle and Eddie Howe's gone too. This great Newcastle team, and they've been a good team. They've been a team that most teams do get a bit nervy and scared to play against. But you know, we no longer got that Newcastle team that scares us and makes us worried for when we have to play them. Unless they can. But don't get me wrong. After this after all these players leave and all that, Tottenham are paying 100 million for Tonali. Arsenal are going to pay like what 75 million pounds for Kimura, so they'll have a lot of money, Newcastle, and they've also got their Saudi money, so they can splash some cash, and they shouldn't be afraid to. But there's going to be a lot to say there in whether or not they are able to do it. Jan Diamonde has also been announced as a Real Madrid player. Uh, this again is an interesting move. It's also been confirmed too that Vinicius Junior is going to stay at Real Madrid and he's not going to go to Arsenal. Um, that's interesting. I think when you look at Real Madrid, their attacking options are getting better and more. There's more of them, and there's not getting any less. I think people are starting to forget, and it sucks when people forget about a player, but people are starting to forget, I think, about Rodrigo Goes. Because, I mean, Mbappe up top and Vini on the left was like a given for Real Madrid, unless they stopped playing very well, because they're like star players. And like you say, unless they stop performing, but like they don't really stop performing. They are two of the most world class they're the best of the best. Now, it was always the question who's going to play on that right. Is it going to be Rodrigo? And he went on a big goal drought, and like he got injured now, so they start playing Arda. They sometimes play Fede Valverde. They now got Jan Diamond to play on that right wing, and like where does Rodrigo fit into it? You don't know. No one's seen Rodrigo play for the last while because he's missed the World Cup through injury, missed the end of last season through injury. So like there's questions about whether or not he'll still be at Real Madrid. Um, Real Madrid's always a hard team to leave because Real Madrid, despite their last few years, they guarantee you trophies. If you go to Real Madrid, you're guaranteed to win trophies effectively, and you're effectively guaranteed to win a Champions League because it's Real Madrid. That is what they do, you know. So yeah, like it'll take convincing, it will take persuading, but you can't give up on it. You just keep believing. And yeah, I feel like Diamond currently with the amount of money that they spent on him, like it's a lot of money. It might even be a club record fee to be fair. Or if not, it's got to be like top two or three in Real Madrid's history. But yeah, um, I would assume he'd be starting on that right for now after the season he's had. But some people want to call him a one season wonder. If he doesn't perform, then I don't think Jose Mourinho, knowing how the special one thinks, I don't think he'll be afraid to drop him to the bench and put Rodrigo or Arda out on the right wing. And the last story, this is really starting to emerge very, very strong. Rodri going to Barcelona. So he's said Barcelona entered the race to sign him. Real Madrid wanted him. Barcelona entered the race. Rodri has said to Man City that he wants the move to Barcelona. And this could be an exciting transfer saga. When you look at that Barcelona midfield, Rodri is only going to add a whole new element to it, because Rodri is, he's an incredible player. We saw him in the World Cup, we've seen him in the Euros, we've seen him for Man City, we've seen him when he won Ballon d'Or. He's that good. And, you know, Barcelona might be able to get their hands on him for 50, 60 million, which, depending on how he does, how strong he is, that could be a bargain price, or it can be an overprice. You know, with his age and his injury record over the last while, I think that signing Rodri is a bit of a gamble on whether or not it will work out well or not. But Rodri will definitely be wanting the move. At Manchester City, he's been there for many years now, and he's won everything there is to win. He's been, individually and with his country and with his club, he's won everything. Going on to go to Barcelona, prestigious club, in his just before he turns 30. Some people say it's his retirement. He'll be a bit more relaxed because he's won everything. But Rodri is a serial winner. He will always try and win stuff. Like we've seen his importance to Man City. The times where he get a red card and miss 3 games, and then City would go on to lose those 3 games. He had an incredible unbeaten run across like 22, 23, 24. So yeah, Rodri's an incredible player, and if Barcelona can get their hands on him, it's a gamble because he might go well and he might do what we've seen him do for Spain and Man City when he's at his best, or we might see him struggle, and we might see him not really adapt to La Liga. He's played there before, but it's a whole new story now. Rodri's a whole new player now. So yeah, we don't know what we're gonna see from Rodri. We don't know what we're gonna see from Barcelona. How they're gonna line up? How they're gonna play Rodri in a holding with Pedri and Dani Olmo? Are they gonna incorporate Gavi? Gavi's a very highly rated youngster who's not maybe hit the hype that people would have thought he'd reach by now. But he's still very young. He's still got lots of time. He's got his new pink hair out. Maybe he's ready to light up Camp Nou now. Who knows? Yeah, they might sign more midfielders, Barcelona, but it's interesting. But if Rodri goes to Barcelona, I'd say more often than not, it's a very good move for Barcelona because in doing so, they gain a leader, a very composed and very technical player, and someone who will be very good in almost his experience that he's going to bring to a very young Barcelona squad who's got Yamal, Kubasi, Bernal, Lopez. They're very young. Barcelona prides themselves on their La Masia graduates. So I think, an experienced player like Rodri not only gives you that guidance for those young players, but also he's a great player and Barcelona would be lucky to have him. And if he does go to Barcelona, it'll be interesting to see what Manchester City do, and as far as replacing him and trying to fill that void that he leaves. Because if he does leave for Manchester City, it's a big gap to fill. Anyway, that's going to be this episode of the Nutmegs and These Slides podcast. Very much hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope we'll see you again very soon. Nutmegs and These Slides is very grateful for all the great fan support we've been getting over the last few months. And now we're taking it to another level. We're now on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and Spotify. If you enjoy the podcast, give us a follow, a like, a subscribe, anything you can. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again very soon.